In this comparative study, I will be exploring the action film genre by analyzing how it's interpreted in the films Kill Bill and Leon the Professional. I chose these two films because they are both excellent examples of the action film genre, while also being very different in their interpretations of the genre. Kill Bill is a 2003-2004 martial arts epic directed by Quentin Tarantino. It follows the story of the bride, an ex-assassin who was betrayed at her wedding rehearsal by her former boss and lover, Bill, who shot her in the head and killed everyone else at the rehearsal, including her unborn child. After waking from a coma, she embarks on a revenge mission to kill all the other members of the deadly Viper assassination squad and, ultimately, Bill. Leon the Professional is a 1994 action thriller by French auteur Luc Besson. It tells the story of a hitman named Leon and his 12-year-old neighbor Matilda. After Matilda's family is murdered by a gang run by a crooked cop, Leon takes her in, and eventually she becomes his protege. These two films are vastly different representations of the action film genre, and these differences are the direct result of the film's differing cultural contexts. These differences will be explored through the lens of the film's differing styles and takes on similar themes. Style and subgenre. Kill Bill is, in its most basic elements, a martial arts film. This is obvious through its use of archetypal story elements and characters. The film's over-the-top, cathartic use of extreme violence is another element of this style. Kill Bill is generally seen as an homage to grindhouse cinema. The term grindhouse, as defined by the Oxford English Dictionary, refers to a cinema showing a variety of films in continuous succession, usually with low admission fees and frequently concentrating on material regarded as of poor quality or little merit. Also, a burlesque theater, a strip club. Films shown at these grindhouses were primarily made up of low-budget horror, splatter, and exploitation films for adults. As one can read about in Quentin Tarantino, The Pocket Essential Guide, Tarantino's love of film was fostered from an early age by his mother and stepfather. His mother actually allowed him to see films with adult content, carnal knowledge, and deliverance being named examples. Tarantino actually stated in an interview with KRON4 News during an argument over his statement that children should see Kill Bill, "I saw movies when I was a kid, alright. I saw all the movies that I'm basing my movie off of as a kid." Leon is more of an action thriller, as signaled by its more conservative and subdued use of violence, its nuanced performances and writing, its flamboyantly evil antagonist, and the ever-lingering tones of discomfort and suspense in almost all of its scenes, which are signs commonly seen in the subgenre according to AllMovie.com's description of it. Leon can definitely be seen to have been influenced by the noir and French New Wave films of the 50s to 70s, films that any French filmmaker growing up in that era, such as Besson, would surely be familiar with. This can be seen as a direct contrast to the aforementioned grindhouse films that Tarantino grew up watching, which instead of nuance, favor direct and straightforward action. Revenge. In Kill Bill, the whole plot is a revenge narrative. The film actually begins with a title card stating, "Revenge is a dish best served cold," old Klingon proverb. And as the film progresses, we see the bride unwaveringly continue on her revenge mission. The film does make a point, however, to show the messiness of revenge and how plenty of others who weren't targets get killed along the way. The film's message on revenge culminates in the execution of the bride's final target, Bill. The bride and Bill actually reconcile their problems and explain their sides of the story before ultimately she uses the five-point palm exploding heart technique on Bill, crying as he takes his final 5 steps. On a more psychological level, cultural historian Maud Lavin, in her 2010 book Push Comes to Shove, New Images of Aggressive Women, states that the bride's embodiment of revenge taps into viewers' personal fantasies of committing violence. For audiences, particularly women, the character provides a complex site for identification with one's own aggression. In Leon, revenge is constantly espoused as a negative ideal. Matilda repeatedly expresses her desire to seek vengeance for her brother, but is repeatedly shot down by Leon. This is most clearly shown when Matilda actually goes to personally exact her revenge on Stansfield, but fails and Leon has to come to save her. The film's real message is of faith and justice, that all will be right and things will work themselves out, as we ultimately see Stansfield get his. Clash of cultures. In Kill Bill, we see a clash of cultures between the American and East Asian cultures. The bride is an American character who sees the ideal life as settling down in a small Texas town with a husband and child. We see the American culture especially personified in the character of Bud, who lives in a trailer in the desert, works as a strip club bouncer, and constantly wears a cowboy hat. Bud is the personification of the American cowboy archetype, a reflection of the dying Old West culture in Age of the Outlaw, a major theme in the films of Sergio Leone and other spaghetti westerns, a major influence on Tarantino's films. However, we also encounter the East Asian cultures of China and Japan. The bride is a master swordsman specializing in the Japanese katana, goes to Japan to get a Hattori Hanzo sword and kill O-Ren Ishii, who is now a Yakuza boss. O-Ren's origin story is actually told through an animated sequence mimicking the style of Japanese anime. The bride is also a master of Chinese Kung Fu, the martial art which inspired the Kung Fu film subgenre, which was also a major influence on the film for Tarantino. In Leon, we see the clash of American and French cultures. Leon is a French immigrant whose first moments in America were indoctrination into organized crime in New York. The film takes place in New York and New Jersey, and the dispossessed culture of New York City is a major theme in the film. The film also serves as a prime example of pre-9/11 representations of New York City cops as crooked and corrupt maniacs who use their positions of authority for power trips. The French influence is more obvious in the theatrical elements of the film, the nuanced performances, low-key, high-contrast lighting, and tongue-in-cheek, overtly sexual humor, all characteristics of French films of the aforementioned noir nouvelle eras, as well as films contemporary to Leon. Redemption. In Kill Bill, redemption is symbolized through the bride's final act of killing Bill. The bride's motivation for revenge throughout the whole film is to avenge her daughter, who she blames herself for not being able to protect. By enacting vengeance, the bride is trying to redeem herself from her failure as a mother. Alternatively, the bride's killings serve as redemption for her victims as well, perhaps with the exceptions of Ellen Budd, as death is the ultimate humbling. In Leon, redemption is symbolized through sacrifice. Leon is troubled by his life and finds no fulfillment in his work. He seeks to redeem himself by swaying Matilda away from the path his life took, swaying her from revenge and cleaning. He ultimately sacrifices himself to save Matilda's literal life by letting her escape from the apartment building during the police raid and staying behind himself, and later blowing himself up with Stansfield, saving her from both Stansfield and himself. Feminism. In Kill Bill, feminism is most obviously displayed through the very idea of female warriors, an idea dating back to the Greek Amazons. The bride is also a perfect example of the obvious complexities in all humans, by her paradoxical nature of being both a nurturing mother and a trained killer. There are also more stupid male characters in the film than female ones. Reverend Harmony, Buck and his companion, Boss Tanaka, Charlie Brown, and Larry Gomez, for example. In fact, O-Ren's method of getting her revenge on the Yakuza boss who killed her parents was by killing him when she pretended to be a child prostitute. In a more meta-analysis, in feminist film theory, a common theme pointed out by critics is the male gaze and the female spectator, a trope where everything in the film revolves around the male protagonist's perspective of it, and that women in these films are not so much valuable in their own character and existence, but what they symbolize and mean to the male protagonist. So, considering this theory, Kill Bill is in fact a direct subversion of this trope, and that almost every character's value lies in their relationship or meaning to the bride, the number one example here being the enigmatic Bill, whose whole aura is one of mystery and unknowns. We never see his face until the second half of the film, and we never really get to know him outside of his relationship with the bride. In the end, he's really just a plot device to motivate the bride and complement the film's themes. In Leon, feminism is shown more through Matilda's becoming a woman. Matilda is by no means the traditional little girl. She smokes, wears promiscuous clothing, and swears. She also faces many extreme hurdles and troubles, and by the end of the film has given up her bad habits and become a more mature woman. Going back to the gaze theory and feminist film theory, we also see this trope being subverted in Leon. This film is more complex in its application of this theory due to the protagonists really being Leon and Matilda. They are two well-developed characters whose existence is each defined by their relationship to each other. Matilda is a chance for redemption to Leon, and Leon is a father to Matilda. So while not completely subverting the male gaze theory, it does negate it by having the male and female protagonist perspectives fleshed out. Parenthood. In Kill Bill, we see the mother-daughter relationship explored. In most mammals, upon birth, and with many upon conception, a bond is formed between the mother and child stronger than any other bond formed between two animals. As mentioned before, the bride is driven by the taking of her child, a relationship that she will seemingly never be able to regain. We feel her pain as the film progresses, and the lengths at which she goes to avenge her child become increasingly Herculean, forcing herself to learn to walk, fighting an army of criminals, climbing out of her own grave, and killing the love of her life. However, one of the most striking acts the bride commits is when she kills Vernita Green, who she learns to be a mother, in front of her own daughter. The bride is so determined by the loss of her child, she ignores the innate hypocrisy and cruelty of ripping another child and mother apart. In Leon, we see the father-daughter relationship explored. After Matilda's family is murdered, she expresses to Leon that the only death that upsets her is her younger brother's. She had no relationship to her father, stepmother, or older sister. Henceforth, subconsciously, Matilda begins to see Leon as a father figure. However, since she has never experienced a relationship with a father figure before, she mistakes the love she feels for Leon as romantic love. Later, as a true father would, Leon makes the ultimate sacrifice. However, even in death, he still watches over her as the plant Matilda plants in the schoolyard. In conclusion, while both being excellent examples of the action film genre, Kill Bill and Leon interpret the genre in very different ways, and end up drawing varying conclusions on the same subjects. These theatrical and thematic differences are a direct result of the different cultural contexts of the filmmakers. The lesson to be learned here, you can't always judge a book by its cover, or, more appropriately, a film by its genre.
Okay, Pilgrim.